I can't believe I'm here. I'm sitting in this cold, fluorescent-lit police station, looking down at the scratched, dingy table in front of me. Across from me is my wife, Lily, someone I thought I knew. The officers called me here because Lily had been caught up in some minor trouble. I thought it was some mix-up. But no, the reality of what's happening is staring right back at me. My wife, tangled up with some guy named Eric. And not just tangled up, she's been caught in a misdemeanor, a lapse in judgment, as they put it. I'd like to say I'm surprised that I never saw this coming, but the truth is, I've felt the strain in our marriage for a while. We've been drifting, as if on different wavelengths, each of us in our own little worlds. But I never thought it would end up like this. I look at her, trying to see some hint of remorse, some flicker of the woman I married. But all I see is someone who's become a stranger, someone who I'm not sure I even know anymore. Maybe it's my fault for not noticing sooner, for letting things slip between us. We've been married for years, and we had our routines, our quiet life. Somewhere along the line, though, we lost each other, and it feels like I'm now standing here, looking at the ashes of something that once meant everything to me. But finding out that Lily's been involved with someone else, that's a knife in the gut I didn't expect. I just didn't see it coming. I'm at work, sifting through the usual reports and invoices when I get a phone call. It's from a federal investigator. My first thought is it's a prank or some mistake, but as the voice on the other end keeps talking, I start to feel a pit forming in my stomach. They're saying my company's accounts are under review due to suspicious transactions. They're accusing me, of embezzling funds, laundering money, even engaging in some high-level fraud. I'm stunned, blindsided. I have no idea where these accusations are coming from or how any money could be missing. I've never authorized any transactions that weren't completely above board, and I've kept meticulous records. But then the investigator mentions concrete evidence. They have records of transactions in my name that I supposedly signed off on, emails from my account authorizing large withdrawals, and signed documents directing funds to accounts I've never heard of. It doesn't make any sense. None of this is adding up, but the investigator is calm, patient even, as they lay out the so-called evidence against me. They have it all: records, emails, documents, even witnesses claiming I directed certain funds to offshore accounts. I feel like I'm trapped in a nightmare, and the walls are closing in. This isn't just a mistake. Someone has deliberately set me up. For days, I'm in a fog, trying to wrap my head around it. The investigators reveal more details. Emails sent from my personal account, signed documents that look eerily like my handwriting, and even employees coming forward to say they received direct orders from me to make certain transfers. My mind races, trying to figure out who could have done this. I suspect a hacker or maybe an inside job. But then I notice the details, little things that only someone close to me would know. Small touches that point toward my personal life. The realization hits me like a truck. This setup might be closer to home than I'd ever imagined. And slowly, I begin to question everything I thought I knew about Lily and her relationship with this guy, Eric. As my life unravels with this investigation, I start noticing that Lily's relationship with Eric isn't all it seemed to be. I always assumed he was just some charming fool she'd been swept away by, but something darker starts to emerge. I overhear her on the phone with him late at night, hushed conversations that leave me feeling uneasy. Then I notice Eric has started acting differently, no longer the smooth, attentive guy he pretended to be. He goes days without contacting her, only to reappear with strange demands, asking her for things that make no sense. I get the impression he's controlling her, manipulating her, especially when she tries to express any concern about the investigation or the mounting pressure on me. Every time she mentions it, Eric brushes her off, sometimes with a nasty edge to his voice, telling her I deserve whatever's coming my way. And there are hints of something bigger, as if this isn't the first time Eric's pulled a stunt like this. He drops little hints to her that he's had arrangements like this before, exploiting wealthy individuals or married women who could give him access to money. It dawns on me that he might be a seasoned con artist who preys on women like Lily, getting close to them for personal gain. Lily, for her part, is visibly shaken. I can see it in her eyes, in the way she avoids looking at me. It's as if she's caught in something she can't escape, and Eric's true nature is coming to light at the worst possible time. Lily is stuck, and even though I'm furious with her, I can see the panic in her eyes. She's trapped between two impossible choices. She could come clean, confess to everything, and help me prove my innocence. But that would mean exposing her affair with Eric, admitting her role in this scheme, even if she never intended to be involved in the fraud itself. She's terrified of the repercussions, afraid she'll face criminal charges, ruin her reputation, and destroy any chance of salvaging our marriage. She knows coming forward would blow up her life, but she also knows it might be my only shot at getting out of this. On the other hand, she could stay silent, protect herself, and let me take the fall. If she stays quiet, she might avoid the legal mess altogether. But she knows what that means for me, that I'll be left to face these charges alone, that my business and reputation will crumble, and that she'll be leaving me to bear the weight of a crime I didn't commit. To make matters worse, Eric is becoming more unhinged. He knows she's thinking about turning him in, and he's not about to let her off easy. He started threatening her, saying that if she betrays him, he'll make sure she goes down with me. He tells her he has incriminating messages, forged evidence that would tie her to every transaction. She's cornered, knowing that Eric could ruin her life in an instant if she steps out of line. As much as I want to hate her, I can see her fear. She's drowning, and I know she's caught in a trap she can't see her way out of. Days go by, and the tension is unbearable. The investigation into my finances is relentless. Every time I think they've uncovered the last of it, more evidence surfaces. Emails I never sent, transactions I never authorized, records that all point back to me. My business associates have started to pull away, distancing themselves as my name gets dragged through the mud. The police are close, scrutinizing every document, digging through every email. Even my employees are beginning to doubt me. I can feel my reputation slipping through my fingers, and it's killing me. Meanwhile, Eric's grip on Lily is tightening. He's growing more volatile, more threatening, sensing that she's on the verge of cracking. Every time I look at her, I can see the fear in her eyes. She's afraid of him, of me, of the whole mess that's spiraling out of control. She's on edge, and it's only a matter of time before she breaks. And here I am, helpless, watching my life crumble around me. I'm fighting to keep my head above water, to find some way to clear my name, but with every day that passes, the odds feel slimmer. I don't know who I can trust anymore. The woman I loved, the woman I built my life with, has become a stranger, wrapped up in secrets and lies. And all I can do is watch as everything I've worked for is destroyed, piece by piece. In the end, it all comes down to Lily. She holds the key to my freedom, to the truth, but I don't know if she'll choose to save me or save herself. The night I confronted Lily was unlike anything I'd experienced in our years together. My private investigator, Sarah, had just handed me a mountain of evidence, and as I looked through the photos, call logs, and bank transactions, my heart sank deeper with every page. I had been working with Sarah for weeks, hoping beyond hope that I was wrong, that maybe this was all some mistake. But there it was in black and white, proof that Lily wasn't just having an affair. She'd unknowingly helped Eric in his fraud scheme, leaving me holding the bag. When I walked into the house that night, Lily was sitting at the kitchen table, a shadow of the woman I once loved. She looked up at me, sensing that something was coming. I dropped the file on the table, each piece of evidence falling like a lead weight between us. "Care to explain this?" I asked, my voice trembling with the rage and devastation I'd been holding in. She stared down at the file, flipping through the pictures, the emails, the financial transfers she hadn't even realized she'd facilitated. Her face drained of color, and she looked up at me, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and guilt. "David, I didn't know," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen." "You didn't mean for it to happen?" I exploded, my anger boiling over. "You betrayed me. You lied to me. You let some con artist take advantage of you, and you dragged me down with you." Tears streamed down her face as she confessed everything she knew. She told me about how Eric had charmed her, made her feel seen and wanted, something she claimed she'd been missing in our marriage. And, bit by bit, she admitted how Eric had manipulated her, asking for small favors she didn't think much of at first. Minor transfers, sharing of documents. She insisted she didn't know it was part of something larger, that she was only trying to help him. She claimed she hadn't realized how deep she'd gotten until it was too late. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I asked, barely able to keep the bitterness from my voice. "You've ruined everything." "I know," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. Please, David. I didn't know he would do this to you. To us." In that moment, I saw her not just as my betrayer, but as someone who'd been used and manipulated, someone who was in over her head. It didn't erase the pain she'd caused, but it changed things. I realized she hadn't intended to destroy me, even if she'd been careless and selfish. And as much as I wanted to walk away from her right then and there, I knew I couldn't clear my name without her help. As much as I wanted to storm out and leave her to clean up her own mess, I knew I didn't have that luxury. Eric had everything he needed to ruin us both, and as furious as I was with Lily, I understood she was my best shot at exposing him. I took a deep breath, trying to suppress the resentment that was threatening to boil over. "Look, we don't have a choice here," I said, my voice hard and unyielding. "You're going to help me take him down." Lily's eyes widened, a flicker of both fear and hope crossing her face. What do you want me to do?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "We're going to set a trap," I said. "You're going to reach out to Eric, tell him you want to continue things. Make him think you're still on his side. And while you're doing that, you're going to get whatever evidence you can to prove his involvement. Emails, records, messages, anything we can use to bring him down." Lily hesitated, her eyes darting back and forth as if she were considering the risks. "But what if he catches on?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What if he figures out what I'm doing?" "You should have thought about that before you got involved with him," I shot back, unable to keep the edge out of my voice. "But you want to make this right? Then this is your chance." She nodded slowly, visibly shaken but resigned. She knew this was her only way out too. If Eric turned on her, if he decided to retaliate, she'd be left with nothing. And if I went down, she'd be dragged down with me. For the next few days, we barely spoke except for updates on the plan. Every interaction was strained, filled with a tension so thick it was hard to breathe. I didn't trust her, not after everything she'd done, and I could see the guilt eating away at her. But we both knew we were in too deep to back out now. Lily reached out to Eric, playing her part, pretending she wanted to be with him, that she was willing to keep helping him. Meanwhile, I worked with Sarah, trying to piece together any information we could use to trap him. Every time Lily met with Eric, I felt like I was holding my breath, waiting for the call that would tell me it had all gone wrong. Each encounter with him was a high-stakes game, one wrong move away from disaster. Days turned into a string of restless, hollow nights. Each time Lily returned from meeting Eric, she looked like she'd aged a year. She'd hand over whatever evidence she'd gathered with shaky hands, a text message screenshot, a recorded conversation, a picture taken when he wasn't looking. The fragments were slowly coming together. Yet the more pieces we collected, the more terrifying it all felt. Eric's network of deceit was vast, his charm a carefully polished act that hid an expert manipulator. One night, Lily stumbled through the front door, pale and visibly shaken. Her hands trembled as she held out her phone to me. I took it, scrolling through a series of messages that left me cold. "He asked about you today," she whispered, her voice laced with fear. "He asked if I'd seen you recently. He knows something's off, David. I can feel it." For a moment, I hesitated, wondering if this was too much. But we'd come too far to back out now. "We're close, Lily. All we need is one solid piece of proof, something concrete that will link him directly to the fraud. We just need a little more time." But the pressure was getting to her. She'd become skittish, almost paranoid, convinced Eric was watching her every move. At night, she barely slept, lying wide-eyed beside me, haunted by what she'd gotten herself into. I wanted to feel sorry for her, to offer some sort of comfort, but I couldn't. My resentment simmered, a constant reminder of the betrayal I was forced to endure. One evening, Sarah called me with a grave tone in her voice. "David, I just uncovered something disturbing." Eric isn't just running a simple fraud operation. He's covering his tracks by taking down anyone who gets in his way. People who were once his associates are turning up with threats against them, some of them going into hiding. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just a game. Eric wasn't just some petty con artist. He was dangerous. And if he caught wind of what we were doing, we'd be his next targets. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of what we'd taken on. Every instinct screamed at me to pull back, to protect myself. But it was too late for that. Eric had already set his sights on me, and the only way out was through. The next day, Sarah confirmed that we had enough evidence to approach the authorities. The plan was simple yet fraught with risk. Lily would meet with Eric one last time, this time wearing a wire and knowing that Sarah and a team of investigators would be waiting outside, ready to move in the moment they had what they needed. It was a gamble, and we all knew it. If Eric even suspected a trap, there was no telling what he'd do. As I watched her get ready, I could feel the tension radiating off her. She adjusted her collar, concealing the small microphone beneath her blouse, her hands trembling. She glanced at me, her expression a mix of fear and regret. "David, if something goes wrong?" "It won't," I said firmly, though I wasn't sure who I was trying to convince, her or myself. "We're going to end this. And when it's over, he'll have no power over either of us." She nodded, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. She knew the risk she was taking, and so did I. But there was no other way. This was the final push. I stayed behind in a surveillance van, watching the live feed from her wire as she met Eric at a dimly lit cafe on the outskirts of town. He arrived, all charm and charisma, leaning in close as he whispered sweet lies, playing her just as he had before. But this time, Lily was ready. She coaxed him, her voice soft and suggestive, hinting at her willingness to go along with his schemes. Eric took the bait, his arrogance blinding him to the trap we'd laid. The conversation shifted to the money he was laundering, to the investments he was managing on behalf of his clients, information he'd never openly disclosed before. But as he talked, I could feel my heart pounding, sensing the shift in his demeanor. He'd started glancing around, his eyes narrowing as if something didn't feel right. "I don't know, Lily," he murmured, leaning back. "Something's been off lately. You seem distracted." My hand hovered over the radio, ready to call in the team if things went south. "Stay calm," Sarah whispered to me, sensing my anxiety. "Let her handle it. She's got this." But Eric wasn't convinced. His face darkened, and he reached across the table, taking Lily's hand in his grip firm. "Tell me, Lily, are you hiding something from me?" His tone was icy, his charm replaced with a cold suspicion that sent chills down my spine. For a moment, I thought she'd break, that he'd see through the act. But she held her ground, her expression perfectly neutral. "Eric, you know I'd never betray you," she said, her voice steady, though I could see the fear in her eyes. But then, he leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "Because if you are, you'll regret it." That was it. I signaled the team, and within seconds, agents burst into the cafe, surrounding Eric before he could make a move. He fought, thrashing and cursing, but they had him restrained in moments. As they led him out in handcuffs, he locked eyes with Lily, his gaze filled with a venomous hatred. "You think this is over," he spat, his voice dripping with malice. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." But as the door closed behind him, I felt a weight lift off my chest. It was over, or so I thought. The weight of what we had just done settled heavily upon me as I stood outside the cafe, watching the police vehicle pull away with Eric inside. The adrenaline coursing through my veins began to dissipate, replaced by an unsettling numbness. I should have felt victorious, but all I felt was an aching void, a grim acknowledgement that my life had irrevocably changed. The man who had manipulated our lives was gone, but the scars he left behind were deep. Lily stood beside me, her eyes glazed with tears, the weight of guilt hanging thick in the air between us. "David, she started, but I raised a hand, cutting her off. I couldn't hear her apologies right now. I couldn't bear the thought of reliving the pain she'd caused. "I need some air," I muttered, stepping away from her. The cafe that had felt so charged with tension just moments ago now loomed like a specter, a reminder of our dark past. I walked to my car, each step heavy with betrayal, hurt, and confusion. The sky was overcast, mirroring my mood, and I felt the world closing in around me. Once I was behind the wheel, I turned the key in the ignition, the engine roaring to life, drowning out my thoughts. I drove aimlessly, trying to clear my head, but memories of our life together played in my mind like a broken record. I recalled our wedding day, the laughter we shared, the dreams we built. All of it seemed like a cruel joke now. Hours passed, and I found myself at the shore, standing on the edge of the water, watching the waves crash against the rocks. The salty breeze whipped through my hair, and I closed my eyes, letting the sound of the ocean drown out my thoughts. But with every crashing wave, I felt the reality of my situation pressing back in on me. I wasn't free. I was a man caught in the aftermath of a storm I hadn't seen coming. That night, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Lily. Her familiar handwriting was a bittersweet reminder of the woman I once loved. I hesitated for a moment, the letter feeling like a weighty promise of more pain. But curiosity got the better of me, and I ripped it open. "David," it began, her words spilling out onto the page. "I don't know where to begin. I'm so sorry for everything. I've been a fool, and I wish I could take back the pain I've caused you. Eric isn't just a fraud. He's a monster, and I never saw it until it was too late. I know I can't ask for your forgiveness, but I hope you understand that I was manipulated too." My heart raced as I read her words. She poured out her heart, confessing the depth of her regrets, the guilt that consumed her. She talked about how she never wanted to hurt me, how Eric had played her like a pawn in his twisted game. I could feel the sincerity in her words, and yet a cold wall of anger rose within me. She told me she was leaving town, trying to find a way to start over, away from the shadows of our past. "I need to find myself again," she wrote. "I hope someday you can forgive me. You deserve better than what I gave you." As I finished reading, tears streamed down my face. Part of me wanted to reach out, to tell her that it would all be okay. But the other part, the part that was raw and angry, held me back. I didn't want to be a crutch for her guilt. I had to focus on myself for once. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wrestling with my emotions. I couldn't escape the memories of our life together, of the intimacy we once shared. It felt like I was mourning a death. My marriage, my trust, my future. I closed my eyes, hoping sleep would bring some clarity, but instead, darkness enveloped me. A few days later, I found myself back at the cafe, a place I once frequented with Lily. It felt like a ghost town, the memories haunting every corner. I took a seat at a table for two, the empty chair across from me serving as a bitter reminder of her absence. I ordered a coffee, but the taste was bitter, matching the turmoil within me. As I sat, I felt an overwhelming sense of loneliness. The world around me continued as if nothing had happened, but for me, everything had changed. I was no longer the man who walked through life with a partner by my side. I was adrift, grappling with the consequences of betrayal. The news of Eric's arrest spread quickly, but it was a bittersweet victory. I learned that he had connections in high places, and though he was behind bars for now, the whispers of his power lingered like a specter. I couldn't shake the feeling that he wouldn't go down without a fight. And as I left the cafe that day, a nagging thought pricked at the back of my mind. What if he came after me? Days turned into weeks, and just as I was starting to piece my life back together, I received a call from Sarah. "David, we need to talk. It's about Eric." My heart raced as I listened to her voice, anxiety tightening around my chest. "What's going on? Is he getting out?" "Not yet, but he's threatening to come after you," she said, her tone serious. "He has connections, and we've gotten wind that he's planning something. You need to be careful." I swallowed hard, dread pooling in my stomach. What does that mean? How can he threaten me from behind bars? He has friends on the outside, people who are willing to do his dirty work. You need to stay vigilant. We're doing everything we can, but I want you to take precautions. Change your routine. Don't go anywhere alone. I felt a cold wave of fear wash over me. It was one thing to deal with my emotional turmoil, But now I had to look over my shoulder, living in constant fear. I thanked her and hung up, feeling the weight of paranoia settle in. I wasn't just a man fighting for his own peace. I was a target. Over the next few days, I became a prisoner of my own home, locking the doors and avoiding familiar haunts. Every shadow felt ominous. Every creak of the floorboards made my heart race. I thought about Lily, wondered if she was safe, if Eric had made any threats against her. But I couldn't reach out. I couldn't risk dragging her back into this chaos. Then, one evening, as I was closing the curtains to shut out the world, I noticed a figure standing under a street lamp across the street. My heart stopped. It was him, Eric. He was leaning casually against a lamppost, his posture relaxed but his eyes sharp, scanning the street like a predator. My breath quickened as I ducked back from the window, my pulse pounding in my ears. He shouldn't be out. He should be locked up. But there he was, a ghost from my past, a tangible reminder of the chaos he had brought into my life. I rushed to grab my phone, dialing Sarah's number with shaking hands. "He's outside," I whispered, urgency spilling into my voice. "He's watching my building. Stay inside, David." "We're on our way," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Do not engage. Just keep your head down." I sank down to the floor, pressing my back against the wall, my mind racing with fear and anger. How had he gotten out? Had he orchestrated this from inside, pulling strings with his connections? My thoughts spiraled as I listened to the faint sounds of the city outside, every noise amplified in my anxious state. Minutes felt like hours, and just when I thought I might lose my mind, I heard a knock on the door. It was Sarah and her team, moving with the precision of professionals. They swept into the apartment, assessing the situation quickly. "Where is he?" Sarah asked, her eyes scanning the room. "He's across the street," I said, still trembling. "I think he's watching me." "Let's not take any chances," she said, her tone grave. "We're going to secure the perimeter." As they moved, I felt a surge of gratitude and fear. They were here to protect me, but the knowledge that Eric was close by twisted my stomach. I had been so focused on the emotional fallout of our past that I hadn't prepared for this kind of confrontation. Just as they began to strategize, my phone buzzed, startling me. It was a message from an unknown number. My heart sank as I read the words, "You can't hide forever. I'm coming for you." "Who is it?" Sarah asked, looking over my shoulder. "It's from an unknown number," I replied, my voice shaking. "I think it's him. He knows I'm here." Sarah's expression hardened. "We need to move now. We can't let him have the upper hand." They swept through the apartment, checking for any vulnerabilities, while I paced back and forth, my mind racing with fear and anger. I could feel the walls closing in around me, the shadows lurking just beyond the door. Finally, Sarah turned to me. "Listen, David, we're going to need you to be brave. We're setting up a safe house for you until this blows over. You have to trust us." "What if he finds me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "We won't let that happen," she assured me. "But you have to keep your head down and stay low. No social media, no contact with anyone outside of this circle." As the team prepped for the transition, I felt a surge of anger and determination. I had let Eric control my life for far too long. This was my chance to take back my power. I couldn't let him win, not after everything he had done. When we arrived at the safe house, I was struck by how isolated it felt. It was tucked away in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place where no one would think to look for me. But the silence felt oppressive, a constant reminder of my isolation. As days turned into a week, I adjusted to this new reality. The fear didn't dissipate. It became a part of my daily routine. Sarah and her team kept a close watch, but every creak of the house sent a jolt of anxiety through me. I found solace in mundane tasks, cooking, cleaning, anything to keep my mind occupied. But at night, when the house was quiet, my thoughts spiraled back to Lily. I missed her presence, but I also felt a strange relief. She wasn't here, and in some ways that felt safer. Then, just when I thought I was starting to find my footing, I received another message. This time it was a photo of Lily, looking distressed, her eyes wide with fear. My heart dropped. The caption read, "She's not safe either." Panic surged through me as I felt the world tilt on its axis. I quickly called Sarah, my voice frantic. "They've got Lily. We have to do something." "Calm down, David," she said, her tone steady. "We're going to get her back. But you need to stay focused. Don't do anything reckless." "I can't just sit here," I shouted, my anger spilling over. "She's in danger because of me." "David, listen to me," Sarah said, her voice firm. "We need to use this to our advantage. We can't rush in without a plan. If he knows we're coming, it could put her at greater risk." It took every ounce of my willpower to rein in my emotions. I felt helpless, stuck in a waiting game while the person I cared about was in peril. But Sarah's words echoed in my mind. This was not the time for rash decisions. As we formulated a plan, I couldn't shake the image of Lily from my mind. I thought about all the moments we had shared, the laughter, the love. I remembered the woman who had stood by my side, not just as my wife, but as my partner in life. It fueled my resolve. I wouldn't let Eric take her away from me again. The next few days were a whirlwind of strategizing, all while I felt the clock ticking against us. We set up surveillance, analyzed patterns in Eric's behavior, and tried to anticipate his next move. Then, on a day that felt eerily calm, we finally received intel about Eric's whereabouts. He was planning to meet with someone who had connections to the criminal underworld. This was our chance to make a move, but it also felt like a trap. "We have to get Lily out of there first," I said, my voice firm as I stood in front of Sarah and the team. "I won't let her get hurt." They nodded, understanding the urgency. "We're going to create a distraction. While we do that, you'll slip in and get her out." My heart raced as we laid out the details. The plan was risky, but it was the best shot we had. I couldn't shake the fear that it could all go wrong, but I had to believe we would succeed. The night of the operation arrived, cloaked in darkness. My heart thudded in my chest as we moved into position. We were hidden in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. When the distraction was set off, an explosion nearby meant to divert Eric's attention. I felt a surge of adrenaline. It was now or never. I slipped through the back entrance of the building, my heart racing as I navigated the dimly lit corridors. The air was thick with tension as I approached the room where I hoped Lily was being held. I paused at the door, taking a deep breath to steady my nerves. Inside, the scene was chaotic. I could hear voices, Eric's and Lily's. I pushed the door open slowly, my breath hitching as I took in the sight. Eric stood over Lily, who was tied to a chair, her face pale and streaked with tears. "David," she cried, her voice filled with both relief and fear. "Get away from her," I shouted, stepping into the room with conviction. Eric turned, surprise flickering across his face. Well, look who decided to show up." "What are you going to do, David?" he taunted, his voice dripping with disdain. "You think you can just walk in here and save the day?" "I'm not leaving without her," I said, my voice steady. "You've caused enough pain. This ends now." He laughed, a chilling sound that echoed in the small room. "You really think you can take her from me? I own her now." The air crackled with tension as I took a step forward, fueled by anger and desperation. "You're nothing but a coward hiding behind manipulation. You've lost everything." In that moment, I saw my chance. I lunged forward, grabbing a nearby chair and swinging it at Eric. It crashed against him, catching him off guard. He stumbled back, shock and rage etched on his face. "Run, Lily," I yelled, rushing to untie her. As I worked quickly to free her, I could hear Eric recovering behind me, his voice a low growl. "You think you can get away that easily?" he spat, lunging toward us. Just as I freed Lily, she grabbed my hand. "Let's go." We bolted for the door, but Eric's hand shot out, grabbing my shoulder and spinning me around. "You can't escape me," he shouted, his face twisted with fury. With sheer instinct, I shoved him back, and he stumbled, giving us the moment we needed. We dashed through the hallway, adrenaline coursing through us as we made our way to the exit. Outside, the chaos of the distraction erupted behind us, smoke filling the air. Sirens wailed in the distance, a beacon of hope. We sprinted towards safety, the sound of Eric's furious shouts fading behind us. Once we reached the vehicle, The world felt surreal. I turned to Lily, her face flushed with relief and fear. "Are you okay?" I asked, gripping her hands tightly. "I'm fine," she said, tears of gratitude spilling down her cheeks. "You came for me." "I promised I wouldn't leave you," I said, my heart swelling with emotion. We embraced tightly, relief flooding through me as I felt the warmth of her body against mine. But as we pulled away, I noticed the chaos hadn't subsided. Eric wasn't done yet. I could feel it in my bones. Sarah and her team arrived moments later, their faces a mixture of relief and determination.